Hey guys, LootWizard here with another video on Gems of War, and this is going to be another PowerPoint video on the Fireblade talent. We're going to be going over the classes, weapons, troops, and some teams. So I'm really excited about this. Let's get right into it. So, what Fireblade does is it is a level 100 talent on certain classes that will allow you to deal triple skull damage to burning enemies. And so we have 5 classes right now in the game that have the Fireblade talent that's unlocked at level 100. The first being the Diabolist, and then Dragon Guard, Slayer, and Sunspear, and Warlord. And all of those have a troop type. So Diabolist is Demon, Dragon Guard is Dragon, Slayer is Dwarf, Sunspear is Raksha, and Warlord is Giant. Now that matters in some cases when you're building a team and you want to have a team that's centered around one troop type for things like mana generation or boosting your stats, and so that's important to know there. Now, I will say that the as you can see here, my two favorite are the Dragon Guard and the Sunspear class. I already have those at level 100. And the reason why I like those two right now is because Dragon Guard has a 40% reduction to skull damage, and that helps a lot because your hero class is going to be in the top of the team, which means it's going to take a lot of skull damage. But it has to be there in order to get that Fireblade damage because it has to do skull damage for that. Now, Sunspear, it doesn't have any of that reduction, but it does have a talent called Root Trap, which will entangle the first enemy, reducing its attack to 0. Its attack, which is what it uses to do skull damage. So that's why I like Sunspear. But Sunspear also has a trait that allows it to have a Firestorm at the start of every turn, which means you're going to have more red mana coming down on the board. And a lot of red mana comes down when you explode the board with some kind of troop that explodes. So that's really fun to use. And we'll get into some teams with those two. Quick note on these other 3 classes here. I will be trying to level all of them probably to level 100. In the past, I've said that Warlord isn't that great of a class for a Fireblade, and I'm gonna go back a little bit on that. It still is a great class for Fireblade. In my opinion, I like Dragon Guard better because of that skull damage reduction. But there are ways around that, so you can choose a support troop like Divinia, for example, which will cleanse and give life to all allies. And if you have a troop like that that's giving life to your hero class, then you don't need as much skull damage reduction. So Warlord is still a class that can work really good if you already have that at level 100. Now, I'm gonna have to eat my words a little bit here on Slayer because I did a video a couple months back when this class came out, and I think I titled the video something like the Slayer class is the worst, or it's garbage, or I said something like that. And I'm gonna have to eat my words a little bit on that because it's the only class out of these 5 that can start with half mana. Because it's a dwarf, and we have a legendary troop, King Highforge, that allows all dwarves to start with 50% mana. So if you include that troop with this class, this one will start with 50% mana, which I think is great. So Slayer is pretty good. I'm probably gonna level that up next to 100, and then probably Warlord, and then Diabolist last. Diabolist is my least favorite out of these 5 simply because it doesn't have anything like really going for it over the other ones, in my opinion. Some of you might disagree with me. Maybe, if you have a great team for the Diabolist class, there's so many troops in the game, and obviously, I can't go through and figure out every single team that works with every class. But so if you know something about that, feel free to leave a team in the comments below in this video, and that would be awesome. Now, moving on, I have a list of all the weapons that I could find that burn the first enemy. So when you're doing that skull damage, you want that first enemy to be on fire when you're doing skull damage to it, so that you get that triple skull damage. So we're going to go over really quickly a list of all these different weapons. First of all, we have the Doomed Axe, which is obviously a doomed weapon. But it's great because it creates skulls as well. So if you do have alignment because it's going to convert purple gems to doom skulls. So if you do have alignment and that enemy is on fire already, that's even better. But this weapon, you will have to upgrade it with some ingots in order to, well, not ingots because it's a doomed weapon. You will have to upgrade it with the yellow scrolls that you get from the Doom Tower event. And once you level that up to a certain point, it will burn the first enemy when you cast it. So when you cast the weapon, it'll burn the enemy, and then it will create those skulls, and then it hit it. And it has, if you're using this weapon with one of these classes that have that Fireblade talent unlocked, it's going to do an incredible amount of damage. Now, the other doomed weapon that has it is the Doomed Opus. And that's a red color. It's a doom weapon. It just does a little bit different thing. It does scatter damage. And it will create a few skulls per red enemy, so it's not as predictable as the Doomed Axe. So I don't think it's as great, but there's the option there. You will have to use those scrolls to upgrade that in order to get it to burn the first enemy. Now, moving on to some other weapons here that are easier to get. We have the Dragonator 8000, which will scientifically burn, freeze, silence, and deal damage to random enemies. Now, that's that. Random enemies isn't great because you want to burn that first enemy. But if you upgrade this with the Mythic Ingots, it does have a burn the first enemy when you cast it. So that's fantastic. Dragon's Eye, same thing. It will burn the first enemy once you upgrade it. And Essence of Evil, it doesn't have anything in its upgrades, so that I remember. But the main thing here is that it will inflict all negative status effects on an enemy and explode 25 gems of their mana color. So burning is a negative status effect. So just by simply casting the Essence of Evil weapon, you will in fact burn them. And so that's a really great weapon right there, is the Essence of Evil, because you don't even have to unlock anything or upgrade anything with mythic or legendary ingots. Fire Ruby Staff is another weapon where you do have to upgrade it to burn that first enemy. Flame Soul it does have the burn the first enemy in the upgrade, but it also has an option in its ability to burn. So it will deal damage to each enemy of a mana gem color that you choose, and it will burn those enemies. So you can basically select whatever mana color that the first enemy is using and burn the first enemy, so you don't need to even upgrade that Flame Soul weapon. Moving on to the second row here, we have the Bronze Lock Pistol. That will need to be upgraded, but it's one of my favorite weapons to use for the Fireblade talent, because it will if you use Cedric and and we'll get into a couple of those teams, but if you use Cedric and you use Greed, you can within like one turn be able to explode or destroy the entire board, and you'll have a lot of those skulls coming down and connecting whenever you destroy the entire board. And since you have that if you do have the weapon upgraded, you will burn the first enemy, and then those skulls will connect, and you get triple skull damage. So that's amazing. Burning Scythe here, or Scythe, it does burn enemies. So you do damage to all enemies, and then it'll burn a random enemy. But it also, if you do upgrade it, it does have the burn the first enemy. And Dragonfire, it has a burn as well, and it has it in its ability. You can mana burn an enemy, and then it will burn them, so you can basically choose that, and it also does have it in its upgrade. Fiery Claw, that has it in its upgrade as well. Flamifer is a really great weapon for mana generation, because it'll create 10 red gems. It'll do some damage boosted by red gems that are currently on the board, and if you upgrade it, it will burn the first enemy. Frostfire Jewel, same thing. You have to upgrade that, and it will burn them. Jack-o'-lantern, if you upgrade that, it will burn them as well. Now, it can also, it does have a chance of burning them just by its ability, because it will inflict 1 to 4 status effects on an enemy, and that could be a potential burning. Now, moving on to page 2, yes, there is a page 2, so bear with me here. It's a lot of weapons here that can burn. So we have Mace of Claws, which is a mana generating weapon that is specific to dragons, and if you do upgrade it, it will burn. We have the Mecha Axe, which is the same thing, a mana generating weapon for mechs, and if you upgrade that with legendary ingots, you will get that burn first enemy. Shegra's Heart, same, kind of same here. It generates mana, but not for a particular troop type. It does cleanse, which is great because cleansing is fantastic for this triple skull damage, because if you get entangled, it's the worst thing that can happen to you. It's going to shut down your triple skull damage if you get entangled, so you do want a way that you can keep yourself cleansed. So Shegra's Heart is a good weapon for that, but you will have to upgrade it in order to get the burn the first enemy when you cast it. Shegra's Spine is a mana generating weapon that works for giant allies, and that's a great weapon for the Warlord class, which is giant. Spark Rocket is a lower mana weapon at 11 mana cost, and it does burn a random enemy, but if you upgrade it, it will burn the first enemy. Summer's Fury is a kind of a mana generating and damage all weapon. Works great with the Sunspear class because it's red and it creates red mana. And once you upgrade it, it will have that burn the first enemy. Sundisk, it will burn the first enemy once you upgrade it. Stonehammer, that needs to be upgraded to. Volcanic Shield, that needs to be upgraded. So you can go through and you can look at all these and just see in the ability or not. Dragon Slayer, that needs to be upgraded. Eternal Flame needs to be upgraded. It will burn a random enemy, so you do have a 25% chance that it'll burn the enemy at the top of the team, but I suggest upgrading it to make sure you get that definite burn the first enemy. So Twisted Malice, that you need to upgrade. Javelin of War needs to be upgraded, and Sunbolt Javelin also needs to be upgraded. Now, if you don't have any of these weapons and you just start the game, well, the first weapons you're probably going to get are these ones down here at the lower part of the board. Sunbolt Javelin is a, I forget what rarity green is, but it's a lower rarity weapon. And you will get that probably early on once you start to level up your yellow gem masteries. So that's a weapon. If you do upgrade it, it does have flaming, which is to burn the first enemy when you cast it. So those are most of the weapons. And now, these are kind of repeated weapons. I had them in those other two lists, but I just want to single these out because these are class weapons. So you can get these weapons, all of them, any of them, if you just equip the class that this weapon is for, and if you win 250 battles with that class equipped, then you'll get the weapon. So these are all fairly easy to get. Now I say easy, but it's going to take a little bit of grinding for those 250 battles, but it goes by pretty quick when you're having fun. And we have the Fiendfire from the Diablos class. We have Essence of Evil from Plague Lord class. Dragon's Eye from the Dragon class. Fire Ruby Staff from Shaman class. Flame Soul from Sunspear class. And the Dragonator 8000 from the Mech class. Now, out of all of these weapons, I would say the one that I would go for right away, the first one, if you don't have any of these, is Essence of Evil. Because it's a mana generator, and it will you don't have to use any ingots to upgrade it. It will burn the enemy when you cast it. So that's the first one I would go after, and then any one that you wanted to after that would be fine in my opinion. So moving on here to what I consider to be probably the best weapons out of that entire list, or at least my favorite weapons is what I should say instead of best. I consider Essence of Evil to be the best, but it's my favorite out of that. Second to that's Bronze Lock Pistol, because those two are they're both mana generators, and they're guaranteed to burn the first enemy as long as that enemy isn't immune to fire. But the thing that makes Essence of Evil even better, in my opinion, is that it will inflict all negative status effects, including Curse. So cursed enemies, even if they're immune to things like fire, burning or fire or something like that, once they're cursed, then if you cast the Essence of Evil weapon on it a second time, you should be able to burn it. So that is where the Essence of Evil weapon is really powerful. And I will say that not only are you going to be getting triple skull damage because of it will be burning, but Essence of Evil is inflicting all negative status effects on an enemy, which means it will be Hunter's Marked, and Hunter's Mark will do double skull damage. So you're looking at, if that gets stacked with the triple skull damage with burning, I mean it's basically a lethal kill if you hit that enemy with skulls at that point. Then we have Doomed Axe, which I think is really great because it's creating skulls and it's burning that first enemy with one cast. Then we have Flame of Fire, which is great. Mace of Claws I love because we have a lot of strong dragon troops, and the class is very strong for the dragon. Summer's Fury is great. I like using that one too at the Sunspear class. And then we have some other ones down here that I think are also pretty good. Shegra's Heart, Shegra's Spine, which are great for the Warlord class, especially Shegra's Spine. And then Spark Rocket is just kind of a general great weapon that you get I would say fairly early on in the game. And Eternal Flame is also, even though it's not a legendary weapon, it's still a unique weapon that does work for these teams. Especially, it gives you a lot of control when you can convert a gem to red, and then it creates 7 more red. So the reason why that's good is because, let's say you have 3 red gems, right? Well, you can get a guaranteed extra turn by converting a gem to red, and next to 3 red gems, you can get like a 4 connect in there by choosing which gem you want to convert. So that's nice. So yeah, those are what I consider to be my favorite weapons that do burn the first enemy. And now there's some weapons that don't burn, and you will have to rely on troops that do the burning for you, but these are all really great weapons to use for these Fireblade classes. So Maying is, I think, the top for obvious reasons, because it will get a lot of attack damage by destroying armor and converting that armor into attack damage. So, I shouldn't really have to say much about that, but if you're going to do triple skull damage and you use Maying on an enemy, like, it's just, Maying is already powerful without the triple skull damage, and you add Fireblade on top of that, and it's instant kills. So then we have the Shield of Urskaya, which I really do like as well, because it enrages and barriers, and it also gives a lot of armor. So you can cast it on your own hero, and it will really protect your hero from skull damage. And what Enrage does is Rage bypasses all of the traits. So let's say that you're up against like Gorgotha, for example, and it's got like 75% reduction from skull damage. Well, if your hero is enraged, it's going to bypass that 75% skull damage reduction and just hit it like it doesn't even have that. So enrage is good, really strong, and so that's one of the reasons I like the Shield of Urskaya. Just keep casting it right on your hero, and especially with some of these classes like the Slayer or the Warlord or the Diabolist, they don't have like really any skull damage reduction going for them within their talents or traits, and so using the Shield of Urskaya with those teams is really, really good. I like doing that. Staff of Visions is also a really underrated weapon for situations like this with the Fireblade talent, because it will keep increasing its skill by 25 if you cast it on yourself, which could increase your attack. It's got a 1 in 4 chance of increasing your attack. And then it will give you barrier, and then it gives you mana. So you can keep casting this thing like crazy on yourself. And if you have that Fireblade talent, as long as you have a troop that can burn the first enemy, you're going to do a ton of damage. And you'll have that protection from the barrier. Guard's Wall is another really great weapon, because it will give life to itself, and then it will also gain barrier. So Guard's Wall, I like to use that weapon sometimes with the Sunspear class simply because it's red, and Sunspear is going to be creating that firestorm. You got all that red mana coming down, and every time you cast it, you'll be able to increase your life and gain a barrier. So it's really frustrating for the enemy to kill it because you keep gaining barrier. And as long as you have a troop to burn that first enemy, then yeah, you can do some damage with that as well. Earth Fury is another interesting weapon, kind of like Ming, but it distributes the attack damage that it gains from eliminating armor to the entire team instead of just to itself. But that can be strong as well. Now, Guardian Crown, that's a really great weapon that comes from one of the delves, and that's pretty powerful too because it will cleanse itself, which, as I said before, if you get entangled, cleanse is very important when you're using the Fireblade talent. But it will also gain a lot of life and armor. For me, it's 59, so close to 60. So essentially, every time I cast it, I'm gaining like 120 of extra, life and armor there that the enemy has to get through. But the other important thing about this weapon that makes it great is that it will move itself to the front. So if you have one of those crazy teams that like keeps knocking you to the back or shifting your troops around, Guardian Crown is great because every time you cast it, it'll just move itself right back up to the front. And if, like I said, if you have a troop that can burn the first enemy, then these weapons are fantastic. And I really like the Guardian Crown as well for that. Life and Death, I think for obvious reasons, it's good because it's gonna steal life, and that's always great. So instead of just gaining life, it's stealing life. So it's still doing some damage to the enemies, and if you're using it with the Fireblade talent, you just need a troop that can burn. Now, the last one I have here is the Writhing Staff, and I really like this one too sometimes because it will create skulls and it will entangle the first enemy. So that entangle is great because it's going to save your hide, especially when you're using a class like let's say you're using the Warlord class and it doesn't have a whole lot of reduction from in its talents and traits for skulls. Well, if you keep casting Writhing Staff, you're going to entangle that first enemy, and there's very few troops in the game that are immune to entangle. So that is really great. Plus, it's going to be creating those skulls, which you're going to need skulls to be created in order for you to even get the benefit of the Fireblade talent. The only thing it doesn't have going for it is the burn the first enemy. If it had that, it would be a fantastic weapon for this setup. But you do have to rely on another troop for the burning. Now, that's pretty much all the weapons. Hopefully you guys aren't burned out yet because I got a lot more information to dump on you, and we're going to be going over troops next. So, best troops for burning. I think Infernus is probably up there as one of the number one troops for that, but it is a mythic. But if you're new to the game and you don't have Infernus yet, it's one of the first mythics that you should try to get. Save up your diamonds, 4,000 diamonds, and you can craft it in the Soul Forge once it comes around. It's great because it's seen better days, but it still holds its own in a lot of teams. But you do need to fully trade it, which is going to cost quite a few arcane trade stones in order to get the burning benefit from this one. As you can see here, it's the final trait, which burns all enemies on 4 or 5 matches. And so using Infernus with the Fireblade talent in a class is great. Great combination. Now, the second mythic troop here is Stonehammer. I wouldn't say that it's as great as Infernus, but it does in its ability, without even unlocking all of its traits, you can just own Stonehammer, and it will stun and burn all enemies. Create a mix of 22 red and brown gems, and then it gains life. But it will burn all enemies, which is fantastic for using the Fireblade. And stun is great because stun will allow, all those, like I used the example before about Enrage. Well, stunning an enemy basically removes that troop's traits for a little time until it recovers from being stunned. So stun is really good for getting that extra skull damage in. Now moving on to a few legendary troops, we have King Silanus and then Wrath. And those two are really great too. King Silanus is a wild folk, and it does start with 50% mana, so that is also a great thing about it. Now, it will do splash damage when you cast its spell, and then all the enemies affected by that spell, and then it will burn all enemies. So that's a good one to have in your team to do burning. Wrath is a skull troop. It will transform gems to skulls, and then it enrages all allies and burns all enemies. Now, enrage, as I mentioned earlier, is really good, so that's good. It will, and then it burns. So to have this in your team is really good for that triple skull damage. Now, here are some troops finally at the end here for burning that are not legendaries or mythics. We have Barghast, which will deal a little bit of damage to an enemy and the enemy below, and then it will burn and fairy fire them both. So it's not random, you can select which ones you want to burn, and you should target that first enemy. Then finally here we have Lava Elemental, which will explode a gem, it'll deal some damage to the first enemy, and then it will burn them. So that is a low mana cost at 10 as well. Lava Elemental, I'm pretty sure you can get that one early on from just opening like glory keys. So that's a good option too for burning that first enemy. And we have a few other troops too. You have the Jarl Firemantle, and you do have to unlock his trait for the burning. It's not as good as Infernus because it will burn a random enemy on 4 or 5 gem matches. Shagra is another legendary card which will burn, but you do have to unlock all of its traits for that. It will burn a random enemy when matching red gems. So again, it's random, so you're going to still have to wait until the first enemy has that fire burning effect on it to get that full triple skull damage. But with a team like Sun Spear that has that Firestorm going, you're going to be matching a lot of red gems, and so I think Shagra is also good if you have the right team set up like that. The Frostfire King is an odd troop, but I included it here just as an option. You deal some damage to 2 random enemies, and then it burns the first group and freezes the second group. And it does have something in its traits, which I didn't put on here, which will burn random enemies on 4 or 5 matches. So, it's kind of random, so I wouldn't rely on this troop as much as I would something like Infernus, or even Shagra probably. Now, the next one here, it's not a legendary. You do get this pretty early on in the game, if you're lucky enough. I think these drop pretty common. I remember getting them, a lot of them, which is Dimetraxia. Dimetraxia it will do scatter damage, and then there's a 75% chance to burn all enemies. So it's a pretty high chance of burning all the enemies, and that could be an option earlier on for you in the game. Then we have Salamander, which will deal some damage to an enemy and burn them, and you can select which enemy, so you can go ahead and select that first enemy for that. Finally, we have a mythic troop here, and it's Phoenicia. You do have to unlock all of its traits. It has a 50% chance to burn a random enemy at the start of your turn. So that can burn the first troop on that enemy team as well. But that, I probably wouldn't use that quite as often in rare situations, because you have better options like Infernus for that burning. Okay, so those were all the troops that I think are decent and good for that. Let's move on to some team ideas centered around some of these weapons. And I'm going to start off with non-mythic team ideas with the Essence of Evil weapon. So I'm using the Drakengard class because that's what I have leveled up to 100, but you could use this with any of those 5 classes, whichever one you have up there to level 100. Non-mythic team ideas here, I have the Essence of Evil, Green Seer, Forest Guardian, and King Silanus. Silanus is going to burn all enemies, as we showed earlier, and the Forest Guardian is going to create your skulls, and Green Seer will be able to generate that green mana for the Essence of Evil. Also, the Essence of Evil weapon has the ability to burn the enemy as well. So I think that's a pretty good team there. Now, if you don't have those two, because those two, Forest Guardian and King Selenis, those two are legendary cards, and you may not have those yet. So here's a second team that you could use if you do have these troops. They're not legendaries. It's the Essence of Evil. You got the Green Seer for mana generation. Captain Skullbeard is for, it's going to create skulls, and then it will explode something on the board. So it's a little bit of a skull creation and mana generator with the explosions. And Barghast is going to burn as well. So that's a setup there that's no legendaries and no mythics. Now, mythic team ideas for the Essence of Evil. Here's a few of my ideas. Now, of course, these are just my ideas and my opinions and some of my troop setups, but you know, you can go wild with this, man. Use your own imagination, and you can come up with all sorts of teams that are way different than mine that'll still work really good. So I'm just suggesting some ideas. These are, you know, things that might give you an idea to make a different team, which is great. So first of all, here I have, I'm still using the Green Seer because I think it's a great mana generator. Essence of Evil, Green Seer, and then I'm using the Wild Queen because the Wild Queen is going to eliminate attack on an enemy that's actually going to steal it and give it to my Essence of Evil weapon, and it'll create a mix of 22 green gems and skulls. So skulls are on the board. I'm eliminating attack on the enemy team, and we're also creating green gems to fill up Essence of Evil. And then the Miraji Queen down there will cause the Wild Queen to start with 50% mana because it's an elemental, and Miraji Queen makes all elementals start with 50% mana. Also, the Miraji Queen will convert all green gems to Doom Skulls. So you have a lot of potential here for skull damage, especially if the first enemy is burning. And yeah, I think it's a great setup. I switched up a little bit here with the second team, different option. If you don't have the Miraji Queen, but you do have King Selenis, then you can still get the Wild Queen to start with 50% mana because the Wild Queen is a wild folk, and King Selenis makes all wild folk start with 50% mana. So that's why I put him in there. So if you don't have the Miraji Queen, you do have King Selenis, you can go ahead and you can put that troop in there. And finally, the third one here is same two ones in the front, but then the two bottom ones I changed the Forest Guardians there to create skulls and convert for more green mana. And then you'll get a lot of 4 or 5 matches with that conversion of gems the Forest Guardian is going to do. And Infernus will then burn everything, burn all enemies on those 4 or 5 gem matches. So that's why that is there. So moving on to the Bronzelock pistol, which is one of my favorite weapons to use. Yeah, these are non-mythic teams. We'll start there. And a couple of team ideas here is Bronzelock pistol in the front. And then you want your skull damage troop right there in the second spot. I have Keeper of Souls, which is a legendary card. What that will do will allow you to select or convert any gem color into skulls. So you can basically create your own. You can look and see where a 4 or 5 match is going to happen, connecting with skulls that are already on the board when you convert a color, and that'll give you extra turns. Now, Greed and Cedric are in there because Greed is going to, once you cast it once, it will give you a lot of gold, and when you cast a Bronzelock pistol, it'll destroy a lot of gems on the board. And Cedric is there to increase the gold so that you can get the board exploding quicker. And as you know, when you start destroying or exploding the board, there's a lot of skulls that come down and connect. And so that's really great when you got the Bronzelock pistol in the front and you have that Fireblade talent. You can get a lot of triple skull damage that way as well. And the second thing, another thing really quickly here is Cedric isn't just there for gold. It's also useful for, it'll shift the team around. It'll like knock the bottom troop to the top, and it'll knock the enemy team around. So if there's a troop at the top that's immune to burning, then you just use Cedric, cast it once it's full, and it'll shift the team, and then you can have another troop at the top that might be that won't be immune to burning. So that's why Cedric is also really useful for that. The second team I have in here, I have Captain Skullbeard because it creates skulls, and it's not a legendary or mythic troop, so that's another option for you to create some skulls there. Here's a couple of mythic team ideas for this. Now, like I said, you can go wild, use your own imagination with some of these things and come up with your own teams. But these are a couple of my ideas. Now, there's this, the first team here, I'm using Umanath. I think I'm saying that right. But this is one of the newer mythic troops we got recently for the Raksha Kingdom. I forget what it's called off the top of my head. It's like Wild Plains or Pride Lands or something like that. But anyway, this thing does damage to an enemy based on all of its skills. And if it dies, it creates something like 12 skulls. So you do have a lot of damage potential there with its spell, and then it will create skulls. So it's like a skull troop that's a mythic. You could use some other mythic troop, but that's just what I put there. And then you could do a team where you have a support troop in there, because the bronze lock pistol is going to get hit. It's going to take damage, and putting a support troop in there like Queen Aurora will allow you to give barrier and life to the bronze lock pistol, which will allow it to survive a lot longer. The only problem with that team setup is you don't have any way to consistently create skulls, so you're going to have to wait until they fall down on the board and connect them to get that triple skull damage. So, alright, let's move on to the next weapon, which is the Mace of Claws weapon, which is with the Dragon Guard mana generating weapon. And here's a few non-mythic teams. Some have legendaries in them, some don't. But I love this weapon with the Dragon Guard, and it's with the Mace of Claws here. Once you cast it, it will burn the first enemy, and it will create a firestorm. So you're going to have a lot of red mana, and you're going to have that first enemy burning. For my first team here, I set up Mace of Claws, then Venbaric, Penlong, and Dragonette. And those are going to do damage to all enemies, and Dragonette will do it will inflict negative status effects on an enemy troop, and it could potentially burn as well. And then the second team here, I have Mace of Claws, Bone Dragon. Bone Dragon is going to be creating like 9 skulls, I think, or more. It eliminates some armor from an enemy troop, and then it creates a lot of skulls. Divinia is going to be there to cleanse and to give mana generation. Dragonette will inflict negative status effects. And for the third team, I have Divinia, Shegra, and Dracos 1337. So Shegra, as we saw earlier, is going to burn an enemy on a random enemy every red gem match that you do. But you have Mace of Claws, so the first enemy will be burnt every time you cast that weapon as well. But Shegra, not only is it going to burn, but Shegra will convert all red gems to skulls. And since Mace of Claws is going to be creating that firestorm, you're going to have more red gems on the board, especially when Divinia explodes it. And so there's a lot of potential there for burning and for creating all those skulls with Shegra. Now, moving on to our mythic team ideas. For the Mace of Claws setup here, we have the first one, Divinia, the World Breaker, and the Dragon Soul. So all of those are just going to be exploding the board. They're all exploders, and so Mace of Claws is going to generate enough mana for those to get powered up, and then you're just going to be constantly exploding. And with all that exploding going on, there's going to be a few skulls that connect, and you'll do all that extra skull damage if that first enemy is burning. Second team here, we have Divinia, the Dragon Soul, and then Elamagrum. And so Elamagrim is great because when you get all those 4 or 5 matches, it's going to eliminate 4 attack on all enemies. So you're going to reduce the enemy attack while having the potential with Mace of Claws to do triple skull damage with once that first enemy is burning. And the third team here, we switched out the Dragon Soul for the Bone Dragon because that will allow you to create skulls on the board. Whereas the other ones, you have to rely on skulls just coming down and matching them when you explode it. And now let's move on to the Slayer class here. First we're going to do the Shegra Spine, and then we'll go to Slayer. So non-mythic team ideas for Shegra Spine weapon using the Warlord class, which is a giant. We can use the Shegra Spine, which is a giant weapon. It's going to generate mana for based on how many giant troops we have in the team. So as you can see here, we have the Fire Giant, I have Zephyros, and then Hindal, Frostcrown, and those are all great troops there. Fire Giant's great because it's going to do triple damage, I think, if an enemy is burning. So there you go. You got that, plus you have the Fireblade going on with Shegra's Spine will burn the first enemy once you cast it if you have it upgraded. Second team here, I do have Jarl Firemantle, and then Fire Giant, and then Hindal Frostcrown. So I just took out Zephyros and replaced that with the Jarl and moved Fire Giant down. So those are a couple of team ideas that you could do with a full giant team. And so yeah, let's go on here to the there is no the reason why I didn't have a mythic team ideas for the giants here is because there isn't currently a mythic troop that I have that goes well with this. But there is Jotnar. There's a mythic troop, Jotnar, I think his name is called, and I don't have him yet, but you could use him as in a mythic team with that weapon, Shegra Spine. Okay, so moving on to the Slayer class here, using that and non-mythic team ideas. I'm using, for the first couple of teams here, I use Dragon's Eye because that is the class weapon for that you can easily get by just leveling up the Dragon Guard class. And once you upgrade it, it does have that burn the first enemy when you cast it. So first team here, we have Dragon's Eye, which is going to destroy gems on the board, so it's mana generation. Also, it will transform the last enemy on the enemy team to a baby dragon. So it's very disruptive if the enemy team has a strong mythic at the bottom of their team. It'll just transform it as soon as you cast it. So that's great. We have Apothecary in here for cleanse and mana generation. It's going to create, you can convert any color of gem to brown, and most of our troops are using brown, so we can fill those up. Now, Moira Cragheart is going to convert all green gems to Doom Skulls, so you have skull generation or creation from that troop. And then King Highforge is going to cause all the dwarves to start with 50% mana, including the hero class. The second team is pretty much the same, except I took out Moira Cragheart and shifted the team around a little bit and put in Gimlet Storm Brew, which is going to start with full mana and convert green gems to brown, I believe. And that will give you a quicker mana start with that. But with these teams, you will have to cast the Dragon's Eye in order to burn that first enemy before you can really have that strong skull damage. So the third team idea here is I put in Shegra's Heart, which simply creates red mana, and I believe it has a cleanse on it, so that's good. But we do have Apothecary for cleanse as well, and then Shegra, Shegra's Heart is going to create red gems, and then Shegra down there, every time you match a red gem, it's going to burn a random enemy, so you have that. Now, if you do have Shegra's Heart upgraded, it will also burn the first enemy when you cast it, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But you do have that Shegra's there for the extra burn potential and for converting all red gems to skulls. So you'll have that skull damage right there. And then King Highforge is for the 50% mana start on the whole team. And I do have a mythic team idea here with this dwarf Slayer class, and that is we can put in the Doomed Club weapon. And now you could use Mang, you could use you know, a variety of weapons. I just put in the Doomed Club. It doesn't do any fire damage because we're going to be getting fire damage from Stonehammer. Stonehammer is going to stun and burn all the enemies once it gets full. So you power up Apothecary, and then you can convert into Brown, and once Stonehammer's full, then everything gets burned. And then you can, with this team setup, I'm using the Doomed Club to convert and create those skulls that I can use to get that triple Fireblade damage. Alright, we got a couple more teams to go over here, and then we'll be right towards the end of this video. Non-mythic team ideas for the Sunspirit class. So here's a few ideas that I came up with for this. Using Guard's Wall, as I mentioned earlier on about this weapon, is that it will give barrier to itself and life to itself, but it doesn't burn on its own, so you will have to use other troops to do that. And as you can see here, I have Shegra in the first one for skull creation and burning, but King Silenus is going to be our main burning troop. Once he gets full, then we can burn enemies with that as well. Aziris is in that first team because that will also allow us to strategically create skulls in 3 matches. Second team, we have Guard's Wall, Shegra, and then Dust Devil and King Silenus. And Dust Devil is in there because it can knock the enemy team around. And if you have, a lot of times there'll be a troop at the top that's immune to burning, or a hero class that's immune to burning, and you can just use Dust Devil to knock it further down on the team, and then you can, you know, start burning those enemies that you need to. And finally here we have a mythic team for the Sunspirit class, which will use Infernus. And now the Sunspirit class is going to have that Firestorm going every single turn, so you're going to have a lot of red mana coming down. So using Guard's Wall with that, you'll have plenty of red mana for that to continue to get barrier. Divinia will give life to everything and explode the board, so mana generation there. Plus it will cleanse, so if your Guard's Wall gets entangled, you can use Divinia to unentangle it, and then that can free it up to do that skull damage. And you got Shegra, you're going to be getting a lot of burn because you're going to be matching red gems coming down from that Firestorm. And then Shegra is going to be your skull creator, so it's going to convert all those red gems into skulls, and since you got that Firestorm going, lots of destruction there. And Infernus is there as once you get those 4 matches, you'll burn all enemies. So, alright guys, that's the end of this video. So thanks if you made it all the way through that. You know, hopefully this gave you guys some ideas and what you can do with that Fireblade talent, some team ideas, and some weapons that you could use. If this video helped you out at all, you know, please leave a like on the video. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you know, please consider subscribing for more videos like this. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.